Good evening. It's a month since flooding devastated parts of Yorkshire. This morning, as heavy rain fell, the army was called in to help with sandbags as a precaution in the Calder Valley.
Heartbreaking pictures again, aren't they? Well, tonight we're looking at the costs of the floods so far, just 4 weeks down the road to recovery. Our affected councils have set up funds to help residents and businesses that were flooded.
In Leeds, where 1,700 homes and 500 businesses were flooded, the council has paid out nearly £300,000.
Now, in York, 416 homes and 157 businesses suffered. Here, the council's paid out that sum, just short of £1 million.
And in Calderdale, the worst hit area, 2,781 homes and more than 1,600 businesses were flooded. Here, the council's paid out around £1.5 million. So what is the money achieving? Ian White is in Hebden Bridge this evening. Ian, what can you tell us?
Yes, good evening, Laura. Well, I have to say it's been another nervous day for the people living in the Calder Valley. The rain has not stopped really all day. As I was driving across from the other side of West Yorkshire over here today, the rain was absolutely pouring down. And, you know, it's ironic, isn't it, that it's 4 weeks to the day of that terrible Boxing Day flood. So people have been anxiously waiting to see if the rain's going to stop. It hasn't yet. It's pouring outside. I'm in one of the relief centres that's been set up in Hebden Bridge. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. But first, take a look at this report that I prepared earlier, where, as you can see, the military have been very much in action today, trying to reassure people.
Back on the streets, out in force, the army was in Mytholmroyd this morning as torrential rain continued to fall once again across the Calder Valley. Specialist vehicles were ferrying hundreds of sandbags to vulnerable areas.
This is a precautionary measure where we're working in partnership with the Environment Agency in case of any sort of future flooding that might take place. But at this stage it's very much precautionary and people have got nothing to be worried about.
We're just making sure that everything is as good as and safe and sure as it can be, and all the waterways are as clear as they can be. There might still be some localised flooding just because the ground is so saturated.
The army's hoping to prevent more flooding here, 4 weeks on from the terrible Boxing Day floods. A month on, businesses are still struggling. The Dusty Miller pub has only just reopened. Many others haven't.
I was a fruit machine collector 12 months ago and I had a dream that I would love to run a pub again. And I used all my life savings, sold my house, looked on Google to find the perfect place and found it. But unfortunately, with the Boxing Day floods, I've lost everything.
2,000 people a week, from toddlers to old age pensioners, used to use the community centre in Mytholmroyd. It's been devastated by the floods. The sports facilities, bar and dance hall have been ruined.
The heart of the village has been ripped out, basically. And it's upsetting to see, but what has been put back is the laughter that's still there, the friendships that have been built, and the community as a whole. But yeah, it's hard to see it, but we'll be back.
These pictures, filmed between Christmas and New Year, show just how dramatic the flooding across the Calder Valley was. Hundreds of businesses and homes swamped. Thousands of people affected in one way or another.
The scale of the floods this time was unprecedented. I think the 2012 flood was deemed to be a 1 in 100 years. I think this one is now a 1 in 1,000 years or so, I'm told. So businesses that weren't affected before have been affected. Homes that were deemed safe before have been decimated. So yeah, it's been quite catastrophic, really.
People here will need help and support for months to come. This relief hub, as it's called, in Hebden Bridge, has been inundated with donations and has seen hundreds of people through the doors who need the most basic of supplies most of us take for granted.
Yes, some really heartbreaking stories and some pretty dramatic sights that I've certainly seen over the past couple of days. Well, this is one of the relief centres that's been set up, a hub, I suppose you could call it, in Hebden Bridge. And Carl from Omega Scaffolding, this was one of the ideas that your company actually had to try and help.
Yes, from Boxing Day we've opened this unit as a drop-off and pick-up point for donations to help with the local flood relief.
Have you been amazed by the actual generosity and indeed the call for help that people have actually been giving too?
Yes, we've not only received local help, but people have been helping nationally, and we've also had help and support from businesses too. So it has been significant, which has made a real difference to the flood relief for the local area.
Have you been shocked by the scale of the flooding this time?
Yes. If you speak to anyone in the local area, this is the worst flooding that Hebden Bridge has been part of, and it has taken a lot of effort by a lot of people to work through it and to help people.
All sorts of stuff coming in. Emma from Calder Flood Aid. I mean, this has been a real community effort, hasn't it, to try and help people, because there are people in desperate need.
It's been fantastic. There are people who've never met each other before, people on the same street, they've never spoken to each other before, suddenly found themselves in a really critical situation. They've forged friendships now that I'm hoping would go on forever.
Because people need basics, they haven't got them, have they?
They haven't got them, no. I mean, if you think about where the water came, it wiped out people's kitchens, living rooms, conservatories, utility rooms, so white goods, dining tables, laptops, phone books, everything like that, it all went.
And people shouldn't feel too proud to ask for help?
Not at all, no. The aid here that has been given by people who genuinely want to help you. So if you are struggling, please come down. The quality of the items that have been handed in have been fantastic.
And we can see some items here. These ladies here have just a couple of things there, some matching cushions and what's that, baby blankets, white goods, all sorts of things. And if you really need some encouragement to pop down here, take a look over here. Here's Amelia and Buster will say hello to you, won't he? He will, won't he? Yeah, so come down if you need some help. There you are. That's the situation in the Calder Valley for now. Back to you in the studio.
Oh, thanks, Ian. Ian White there in the Calder Valley. Well, I've been speaking to the local MP, Craig Whitaker, and asked him if the government has done enough to help.
Well, the Prime Minister absolutely sees it as a priority. I mean, we've already had £280 million for parts of Yorkshire. The thing in the Calder Valley, though, is that we don't know yet what the flood defences look like. And as soon as the Environment Agency come up with the full catchment plan, which has been announced for the Calder Valley, when they come up with what that looks like and how much it costs, then they'll look at awarding money for it.
We're a month on now already. Surely they might have had enough time for that. And there is a figure being bandied about, which is £15 million.
Well, I've heard that figure too, but what I haven't seen is the plan. And I think that figure's being bandied around by Calder Council. I mean, if you've seen the plan, then by all means send it on. Let's have a look at it and I'll lobby government for it. But my understanding, without question, is that there is currently not a full costed plan available for the Calder Valley. They have done consultation on it. They have been doing modelling on it for the last 3.5 years since the last floods.
Precisely. They've known that this flood would happen in the last 3 years. In fact, it's already happened in the last 3 years, 3 times. And so it's only a matter of time before the Calder Valley is flooded once more.
Well, we live in the Calder Valley, and the Calder Valley does flood every year. What it doesn't do is flood on the scale that we've just seen, or indeed seen 3.5 years ago. The modelling that they're looking at doing is a full catchment plan. We're not talking about just putting walls up all down the Calder Valley. We're talking about what happens on the moors, what happens with tree planting, what happens with water management to slow that process up. And as soon as that comes out from the Environment Agency, then we can have a look at the cost of that model and we can lobby government to make sure we get funding for it.
Do you think that rivers have been effectively managed in the area? Do you think there's been too much focus on the upland areas and not enough on the area where there are towns and cities?
Well, I'll absolutely agree with that. I mean, one of the key things that we have to look at, and Calder Council have to look at very, very seriously going forward, is some of those maintenance issues. What we do with things like the river, what the Canal and River Trusts do with the canals, and indeed what happens with gully cleaning and drain cleaning throughout the year. Because one thing we do know is that has been pretty poor.
Thanks very much for joining us tonight.
There's such an incredible community spirit there, isn't there? And I think it was summed up for me by Julie Wilby at the Mytholmroyd Community Centre. She says they will continue, and good luck to all of them over there. We'll have more, by the way, from the Calder Valley on our new extended late programme as part of the BBC News at 10. I hope you'll join us.